شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to begin by a brief remark before I read my statement. We have noted that the briefers in today's meeting who are asked to provide an assessment of what's going on in Aleppo, these are briefing from London, Geneva, and Amman. And there isn't a single representative that is actually briefing from Syria, which was very successful during the last session, as a representative of WHO, Ms. Hoff, did actually brief from a premises in Damascus. She provided very valuable information, if you recall. Hence, this is a very serious instance of overlooking something important, as there is an exclusion of those who are actually UN staff working from Damascus. It is quite peculiar, actually. It reminds us of another peculiar instance. 3 member states of this council worked on a humanitarian draft resolution without coordination with our delegation, the delegation of the Syrian Arab Republic. As if in this hall we are recounting the surrealistic scene in the novel 1984. This is a novel by George Orwell that you all know of. Mr. President, once again, the representatives and paymasters of Al-Nusra Front and affiliated terrorist groups convene an emergency meeting of the Security Council as they rush to rescue those terrorists and provide them with moral and political support. Against the backdrop of the victories by the Syrian Arab Army and its allies as we counter terrorism in Syria, the moderate terrorism and the genetically modified terrorism. Before I delve into the details of my statement, I would like to reaffirm to the representatives of Abu Muhammad al-Julani, who is a half-sibling of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the head of ISIL. I would like to reaffirm to them that their continued exploitation of Syrian blood and the suffering of the Syrian people through portraying what's happening in Syria as merely a humanitarian crisis would not deter us, the government of the Republic of the Syrian Republic, from discharging our constitutional and legal right as we counter terrorism supported by our allies and as we save Syrians from the scourge of these groups in line with the principles of international law and implementation of Security Council resolutions. This is our actions as a sovereign member state of the United Nations. And I would like here to communicate to those who exploit the Syrian blood part of a letter by Syrian children that was submitted to the resident representative of UNICEF in Damascus. It seems that the representative of UNICEF, who is joining us via video conference, has not heard of this statement, letter, I mean. It is a letter that protests against the terrorist attacks that target schools in Aleppo. And I quote, "We want to go to our schools without fear of car bombs. We want to play without being shelled and bombarded. We want to live in safety, happiness, and joy and peace. The blood of our friends, the martyr friends, will not be spilled in vain. This noble blood will soon usher in a dawn of victory against obscurist and terrorist forces. End of quote. This is a letter by the children of Aleppo to UNICEF. And I would like to communicate this to the representative of UNICEF since he is with us here today. Mr. President, the representatives of al-Nusra Front inside the council and outside the council would not hear the voices of these children. They will not know of the testimonies and stories, horrific testimonies and stories of tens of thousands of Syrians that were saved by the Syrian army and its allies in Aleppo recently, and how they were saved from the terrorist gangs of al-Nusra Front for 4 years. They have suffered so much. They were sold humanitarian assistance and bread at prices that they cannot afford. They also suffered from the enslavement of women, recruitment of children. All these people were used as human shields. These are realities, real stories reported in the media 24/7, and has nothing to do with the 1001 nights that is narrated by some in this council. By the way, I would like to tell my colleague, the representative of the United States of America, that ISIL and al-Nusra Front and all these terrorists that enslave women have made a list, a price list for women as they are sold as slaves in this slavery market by age. The prices are determined by age. It seems that the price bracket that applies to some of the colleagues, female colleagues here, would make them sell for only $40. This is the value of women when they are enslaved. It's only $40. $40, ladies and gentlemen. The liberation of more than 80,000 inhabitants in Aleppo, including tens of thousands of children, was never part of the plans of the Ministries of Foreign Affairs in France, the US, or Britain. They claimed for years that they do defend those civilians. The call by the governments of these states to impose sanctions on Russia and Syria after we liberated our Syrian civilians and our people proves that these Syrians are exploited by the sponsors of terrorism to protect the terrorists and to exercise cheap political blackmail. Today, tens of civilians that tried to move from eastern Aleppo to western Aleppo, so they tried to escape the areas of the terrorists to the areas under the protection of the Syrian army. They were killed by the terrorists, the moderate or the genetically modified, supported by Britain, France, and the United States. Mr. President, there is an elephant in the room, and nobody wants to see that elephant, as Mr. O'Brien did say. The non-state armed groups, he did not refer to them as terrorists. He said non-state armed groups. They prevented the civilians in eastern Aleppo from leaving. We have them here via VTC. Ask them if I'm mistaken. They said that non-state armed groups prevented civilians in eastern Aleppo from leaving. This means that these terrorist groups are using the civilians as human shields. The farce staged by some inside this council today through misleading statements that are in line with the positions of their governments, that exercise blackmail and negative practices. It will not block the sunshine. And the fact that our people in Aleppo have regained hope in life after having been liberated by the Syrian army and its allies. They have been provided with means of decent living, shelter, food, and medicine. Now they enjoy stability and safety after suffering of more than 4 years. The protagonists of this theater of the absurd, and as they represent al-Nusra Front, failed to distort the military achievement as we liberated civilians in Aleppo. It also failed to distort the humanitarian and relief performance by the Syrian government and its allies, as we have provided assistance to those civilians after we liberated them from the claws of terrorism. I would like to point that the government of Syria did request the office of the resident representative of the UN in Damascus, and Mr. de Mistura and Mr. O'Brien are aware of this. We have actually requested from the office of the resident representative of the UN to contribute to the relief work by the Syrian government to alleviate the suffering of tens of thousands of Syrians in Aleppo, and that the resident representative would use the stocks of UN warehouses in Aleppo and any other assistance that would fulfill and meet the needs of basic needs of our citizens. I'd like to say that the resident representative will actually go to Aleppo because the Syrian government did approve his visit to Aleppo tomorrow, Thursday. And then we will see what OCHA can deliver. I would like to commend the efforts and the work of the friendly country of Russia that has supported Syria not only in its war against terror, but it has actually supported us in different aspects of humanitarian relief work. The President, Vladimir Putin, has given instructions to the Ministries of Defense and Emergency to send mobile hospitals to provide assistance, medical assistance, to the inhabitants of Aleppo and surrounding neighborhoods. I would like to reaffirm these are real field hospitals and not just studios to fabricate fictitious stories of heroes. These are terrorists and not heroes of the white helmets that was actually established by the British Officer of Intelligence, Mr. James Lowe Mesurier. It seems that he, with French origins. It's time for this theater observed to end its practices that has led to the spread of terrorism in an unprecedented manner. This has led to a panic, and these countries need to realize that terrorism cannot be used as a tool to turn Aleppo to another Kandahar. This will not happen, not in their wildest dreams or nightmares. Mr. President, it is unfortunate that this light-headed political practice is not just limited to the governments of member states of the United Nations. It actually includes senior secretariat officials that have described the fate and plight of tens of thousands of civilians saved by the Syrian army and its allies from the claws of terrorism, an unknown and unsafe fate, as if they provide support to the terrorism. They send them a message saying, continue with your terrorism and we will continue to provide you cover or whitewash for your work and what you perpetrate as we work in the Security Council. It's very clear that the Security Council has shirked its responsibility to fight terrorism and maintain international peace and security, and has turned it into a theater for political tension and blackmail. These countries have actually obstructed the designation of terrorist organizations And as you know, the United States, France, and the United Kingdom refused to designate Jaish Muhammad and Ahrar al-Sham terrorist organizations, and they refused to put them on the lists of the sanctions committees. They have also shirked their responsibility in implementation of relevant Security Council resolutions, particularly 2253. They look the other way when other countries support these terrorist groups, as they provide unlimited media and financial support to the terrorists. And this is in addition to takfiri fatwas and Wahhabi jihad, in addition to logistical support and opening the border to the FTFs and weapons. This is provided by the regime of Al Saud. They are the godfathers of world terrorism, and the regime of Erdogan that supports the Muslim Brotherhood, and they still are under the illusion that they are the sultans of these times, like in the past, in addition to the regime of Al Thani in Qatar that supports Al Nusra Front, and they are actually their main sponsor. Their Minister of Foreign Affairs said 2 days ago, as they made a statement to Reuters, that their sheikhdom will continue to provide support and arms to the terrorists in Syria, even if the incoming U.S. administration end this support. It seems like we are moving backwards in history, and actually this makes us go to the regime of the Hasbullah the 14th, and you have a prize if you know who is Hasbullah the 14th. Mr. President, this role of sabotage, this is in line also with the sabotage role of Israel as it provides support to the terrorist organizations in the area of operation. And I would like to refer to the Israeli aggression last night. This has not been referred to by any of the briefers today. It is an Israeli aggression late last night on Asabura in the western rural Damascus, as Israeli warplanes fired 2 missiles from the Lebanese airspace. It is an aggression that is simply a desperate attempt by the Israeli occupation entity to raise the morale of the terrorist organizations that are unraveling after their losses in many areas, in particular in the west of the rural areas of Damascus. In conclusion, Mr. President, I would like to call again upon the faint-hearted in this council that still sympathize with the moderate terrorists. I call upon them to take back this barbaric garbage of theirs, as they have exported it to us for the past 5 years, and they should care for them through the self-governing areas, establishing these self-governing areas in their own cities, in Europe, in America. Take them, if you want them. A Nusra Front. Take them, take their members, give them entry visas, permits of residence, give them the self-governing areas in your countries and in your cities. My government is still committed to its policy that balances the priority of fighting terrorism as the main threat to security and stability in the different parts of Syria, on the one hand, and on the other hand, achieving a political, Syrian-led, inter-Syrian dialogue solution without any intervention from foreign powers and without preconditions. Hence, the Syrian government is still waiting for an invitation to Mr. de Mistura to resume the Syrian dialogue that he stopped in May 2016. I thank you, Mr. President.